This week on Jersey Matters, a backup at America's ports has caused a national supply chain problem, but not in New Jersey. We talk with Beth Ann Rooney from the Port Authority. So now you shouldn't take an aspirin a day? We get the latest from cardiologist Brett Seelove and a plea from a veteran who desperately needs a kidney transplant to stay alive. Hello and welcome to Jersey Matters. I'm Larry Menti. We have seen video of the backlog of ships at America's ports and the empty shelves caused by the disruption in the supply chain. So we checked in with the Port Authority for New York and New Jersey to find out how they're doing, and we got a surprising answer. Here's Deputy Director Beth Ann Rooney. Thanks so much for your time today. We've been seeing these stories on the national news from Los Angeles, Long Beach, from Savannah, Georgia, about real supply chain problems at the ports, ships backed up offshore. So we wanted to get a health check on what's going on in New Jersey. How are we doing?
We are doing remarkably well as compared to our counterparts on the West Coast and in the South Atlantic. Right now, actually all this week, we have had just one vessel offshore at anchor waiting to get in at a time. And the average time in which those vessels wait year to date in 2021 is just 1.5 days.
So you're not doing any worse than you normally do. You're doing as well as you normally do. Let's put it that way.
You know, on the ship and vessel side and discharging the cargo from the vessels, we're doing as normal as we have been doing for as long as I can remember. We do certainly have some issues when it comes to cargo that is sitting on the container terminals longer. There are concerns with the chassis that the containers sit on being out on the street longer. And then that makes for the truck driver's experience a little more difficult in delivering that cargo because there aren't enough wheels to go around. And then when there are wheels, many of the warehouses and distribution centers are filled to the rafters. So we have to wait for the domestic trucks to deliver the cargo from the warehouse and distribution centers to the retail stores and the fulfillment centers.
So although you're not having any problems getting shipped to port, you're having some problems in getting the materials, the products from the port and being distributed across the country.
That's correct. You know, it is a supply chain, and every aspect of the supply chain is inextricably linked. And when one aspect of the supply chain doesn't have the full capacity, and that capacity could be infrastructure, it could be personnel, it could be equipment, it could be time. Those issues on each aspect of the supply chain has an impact upstream and downstream from that particular node of the supply chain.
So what problem do you see? What's causing some of the delay getting the product from port?
Well, so we're looking through August. The Port of New York and New Jersey has handled 28% more cargo than we did last year in 2020. And last year was still a record year in spite of the pandemic. So 28% more cargo. The marine terminals and the waterways have the capacity to handle that volume, but the rest of the supply chain hasn't had the time and the opportunity to build the necessary capacity to handle a 28% growth in a very short period of time. So that is, we need sufficient trucks, we need sufficient truck drivers, we need sufficient rail, we need sufficient rail operators, we need sufficient chassis, warehouse space, warehouse workers. So it all starts with the fact that the shippers and the amount of cargo that's coming into the country is 30% more. And that's not a figure that is unique to New York and New Jersey. Our counterparts on the West Coast and in the South Atlantic are seeing numbers very similar to what ours are.
So in your case, at least, I don't know what's happening specifically in Savannah and in Los Angeles, although I've heard reports. But in your case, would you say it's not a problem of having, I shouldn't say enough truck drivers or enough workers, but if you had the same loads you had last year, you'd be fine. It's just the increase in the goods coming in. It's not a decrease in the number of workers.
So that is an excellent question and a really important point. So we in New York, New Jersey have not seen a decrease in the number of truck drivers. There has been a turnover in truck drivers, but not a decrease in the number of drivers and trucks that are servicing our facilities every day. In fact, we have seen an increase, but that increase is only about 2%. So when you look at a 2% increase in truck drivers and a 20% increase in cargo activity, there's clearly a disconnect.
So you're not seeing the labor shortage that's being reported all across the country. You're not seeing that at the New York, New Jersey port.
Not at the ports. So the longshore labor has been on the job since day one. Working, has not missed a beat. Working vessel activity 24/7, 365, with the exception of, a couple of, non-work holidays like Christmas and Easter. We're working the docks 24/7. The truck driving community has been, servicing the port. But again, there is a shortage downstream of truck drivers delivering the cargo from the distribution center to the retail stores and to like an Amazon fulfillment center. And because that cargo is not moving out of the warehouses and distribution centers quickly enough, it backs up into the marine terminals.
Do you have contact with your counterparts in Los Angeles and in Savannah? What do they tell you?
We do. They look, we're all struggling. We're all struggling. Every port is different. There's an old adage in our industry anyway, that if you've seen one port, you've seen one port. Our labor situation in New York is very different than it is in the South Atlantic and very different than it is on the West Coast. Our longshore labor generally are hired and assigned to a particular facility, 99% of the time. Whereas on the West Coast, they hire out of a hiring hall every day. So a worker could go to a different terminal from one day to another. Whereas our guys and gals are going to the same terminal most of the time. So they get used to the processes, they get used to the equipment. They're experts in the equipment that is in their home terminal. So it's a very very different situation from port to port.
But do they tell you specifically, this is our problem? This is why we're having a problem?
Again, we all have the same problems. Volume is 30% more than what they expected to have this year. They too have warehouses and distribution.
But you're handling it. You don't have ships offshore. You're handling it. Are you being diplomatic? Is that what's going on?
No, definitely not being diplomatic. Look, we want the cargo that's going into the West Coast and the South Atlantic to come to New York and New Jersey. I'm confident that we can handle it. But look, I'm not working in those ports. I can't tell you, exactly why they're having the problems that they're having. I know one, situation is, that the labor is different than it is here.
Okay. All right. Well, but they're seeing the same increase you're seeing. So they are seeing the same increase. Okay.
Yeah. So the Port of Savannah through August is 30%. Long Beach is 29%. LA is 30%. And we were 28%. So we're all on par with each other in terms of the increase in cargo. You're proud that you seem to
be handling it better, but it's New Jersey pride.
It is New Jersey pride, and it's the men and women who are on the front lines, from the longshoremen to the truck drivers, terminal management, and everybody through the supply chain. Like I said, they have not missed a beat. It's not without its challenges, but we really, have been across the Port of New York, New Jersey, been doing an incredible job for the last 19 months.
Well, thank you very much for doing that job.
Thank
We're
you,
all
Larry.
proud of you.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Beth Ann Rooney, Deputy Director of the Port Authority. Still to come on Jersey Matters, a big election in New Jersey is coming up. We'll check on the biggest races next.